And drawing your attention to 1 week before Michael Ricci's death, again, without telling us anything he told you had happened, what, if anything, did you observe on his neck?
He had scratches on his neck.
This is so sad. We're going to talk about everything going on in that relationship, the domestic violence, alcoholism, a lot of trauma this family was struggling with. And before the case goes to the closing arguments, we know that the defense does have a chance to present evidence, and it's our understanding they won't be calling witnesses, but there's of course a chance that Christine Ricci could testify. Now, we got an indication the defense is asking for an instruction for the jury to know that they cannot hold it against her if she doesn't testify. That's an indication that she likely won't be. We are told that the judge is going to be doing a question and answer session with the defendant, a formal legal terms called a colloquy. It's just the back and forth, the judge asking her if she understands her rights, understands that she does have the right to testify or not. So we'll address that when the time comes. In the meantime, I've got two great guests I want to welcome in now and talk about whether the Commonwealth has proven its case in the sad situation that the Ricci family was dealing with behind closed doors. Psychotherapist and CEO of Life Counseling Solutions, Dr. Janie Lacy is here, along with high-profile criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Michael J. Brown. Michael, I'd like to begin with you, please, because we know the state carries the burden, or in this case, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. In your view, have they proven this case against the defendant beyond a reasonable doubt?
Yeah, good morning, Julie. Good morning, Doc. You know, that witness that you just played, Julie, really solidified things, because what the state has done is they've gone through the history and shown, obviously, what he did. The victim was horrific in the sense of having this affair with another woman, but then they showed the aggressive and hostile manner in which the defendant reacted. And they went through time and time and time again of instances where she allegedly was aggressive and used physical force towards him, lashing out. So the end result now is you have somebody who's stabbed, and although they are suggesting, and they're doing a good job of a self-defense claim, up to this point, my response is yes. And I think the only way they can save themselves is if the defendant takes the stand and can put herself in front of a jury and tell her story that it was in fact self-defense, and I explain away all these past instances as well. That's important.
Sure, you're absolutely right, Michael. Thank you for that. Speaking of past instances, we do have past instances with knives. This is really sad that Christine Ricci would engage in self-harm or attempted self-harm after this affair. Dr. Janie Lacy, certainly our hearts go out to everyone in that family. There were a lot of struggles, alcoholism with Michael Ricci, the affair, the trauma it caused the children, the domestic violence, the trauma that caused the children. Looking at it objectively for any families who are struggling with the same types of problems, what advice do you have, please, professionally in situations like this one?
Well, it's definitely a very sad situation, as you mentioned, for everyone involved. It wasn't just the couple, it's the kids, it's their extended family. And when we look at the trajectory of a lot of couples, families, there's a lot of people that are struggling, whether it's alcoholism, whether it's 60 to 70% of all couples will experience some type of betrayal trauma. There is help, there's intervention. And when we look at these types of situations, when we have mental health disorders or challenges before some type of trauma happens in relationship, the coping mechanisms, all the things that that person brings to the table will then come to a head, because we know that lots of people today experience lots of different traumas in their relationship, but it does not necessarily resort to violence, to murder. And there is lots of help out there, because a lot of people feel, Julie, ashamed when they find out their spouse has cheated or have done some type of betrayal, and they will hold it inside and they don't share. So what I would tell families, if there's something that they relate to with this story, is to get help. They're not alone, and their future self will be grateful that they've done some type of intervention today, not only for themselves, but for their family and for those that will be affected by the choices in that relationship.
Great insight, Dr. Janie. Thank you for all of that. I have a clip from one of the defendant's children, the youngest of the three, Michael Ricci Jr., testifying. And this is a clip from the cross-examination where he's talking about how aggressive his mom became after finding out about that 2018 affair.
And you felt like your mother was bringing it up every day, and you really started to have a feeling of resentment towards your mother because she kept bringing it up after you had decided that you wanted to kind of go back to the way things were.
Well, it wasn't just because of that. There were other variables at hand even before the stuff with that.
Okay, but you did have, in 2018 into 19, you did have some resentment towards your mother based on the way she handled getting over the affair.
That was a factor, yes. That was the only thing.
You had other reasons for resenting your mother, but there's no question that by the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, you had a lot of resentment for your mother.
She was getting aggressive in the fights, yes.
And we could tell, couldn't we? Michael J. Brown, when I watched this young man testifying, the biggest thing that stood out to me was how he would refer to his mom as the defendant. Always the defendant, never my mother, never mom, not even by her first name, Christine, the defendant. What do you think that sends to the jury in terms of a message?
It's a horrible message for the defense, obviously, Julie, because oftentimes when you have this husband-wife and you have a death, regardless of who's the victim, you still have a child who takes the stand and is torn. And they obviously love the defendant, whoever that is, and they love the victim. And they basically describe what they've seen and what they've been through, but they don't take sides. Here, it's quite obvious that referring to his mom as the defendant, you could tell he is all in regards to she's the bad person, she's the culprit, she should be convicted, and that comes across pretty well.
Most certainly, it sure does. Michael, thank you for that. Dr. Janie, when I was watching this young man testifying, he talked a bit about going through the process of trying to be supportive of his dad in attaining sobriety. What does that do to a child, albeit, young adults, when they're trying to help a parent through that tough process? Is it traumatic for them, too?
Not only is it traumatic, but it also kind of puts them in a parentified position because they should be the ones receiving the support and the care if we kind of look at traditional family dynamics. So the fact that he had to be put in this position to support and almost probably have to mature, even to a degree more than his parents at that point, it puts a lot of weight and a lot of responsibility on young adults in these situations. But they also can have what we would call these traumatic bonding relationships where they almost could take responsibility and almost feel like it's their responsibility, where their level of empathy and compassion can also interrupt their own life, and probably would be the case in this family with the depths of trauma and the things that he was witness to, especially with both of the parents that were raising him and that he should love.
This is really helpful, Dr. Janie. It's like they really had to grow up quickly, and they could be losing another parent now, depending on what this jury finds, as you both know. Dr. Janie Lacy, attorney Michael J. Brown, thank you for the conversation. Stand by, please. Later this hour, we're going to be previewing the closing arguments and talk about what it may mean if Christine Ricci doesn't take the stand. And still ahead, we've got a college professor behind bars this morning after his wife and baby girl are found dead. And this isn't the first baby who's died in their custody. Plus, did a bond blunder lead to murder? The tragic case of the death of Lauren Johansson.
Tonight on Court TV.
These are the big cases that everyone is talking about.
A lot of new developments taking place.
Shocking.
I know who killed John Bonet.
To say the least.
You cannot make this stuff up.
It's unreal. The scene of the double murders is behind us right here. Things are happening. The investigation is continuing.
Closing arguments with Vinnie Politan. Tonight at 8/7 Central. Only on Court TV.
Now for what's trending in true crime, a Denver college professor is waking up behind bars this morning after his wife and infant daughter were found dead in their home. 44-year-old Nicholas Mickelbust was taken into custody Monday after calling 911. Police say they found his wife on the floor bleeding and their infant daughter not breathing. Detectives say that the suspect told them that his wife fell off of a stepladder, but say that her injuries were inconsistent with the fall. They also noticed bruising and blood on his knuckles, along with scratches on his chest and his neck. Mickelbust told them that he has psoriasis and he scratches himself a lot. Now, to be clear, he has not been criminally charged. He's being held on suspicion in the case of the death of his wife and his daughter. So we'll keep you posted if anything is filed. Right now, we're asking the question, do you believe this guy's excuses about his wife falling off the stepladder and the scratches because of psoriasis? Let's bring in our power panel now. Still with me, psychotherapist and the CEO of Life Counseling Solutions, Dr. Janie Lacy, and high-profile criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor, Michael J. Brown. Oh, what do we think about the professor? Dr. Janie, would you start us off, please?
Well, what I think about what I'm hearing about the professor is there's definitely something that's not right here. So when we look at that his family has turned up and they're no longer here and he's at the center of this, I'm wondering exactly what his mental health issues may be, his lack of empathy and compassion for potentially hurting those that he's loved, and what is his history here? Because especially if there's this level of him coming up with this narrative to try to remove himself from the harm that his family has suffered, there's definitely more to the story. And I would want to be looking into his mental health history and his previous relationship history, especially around violence and abuse.
Yeah, I would love to know the same. Apparently, the child was found on a bed inside the bedroom. Pronounced dead, but no visible injury. So this is what makes this case even more unusual. Court documents, showing that, he's got a lot of bruising on his body, on his knuckles, the blood. Michael J. Brown, what are you thinking? This guy talking, he's saying a lot. My first reaction was this guy is not a criminal procedure professor. He teaches English, looked it up, because he is talking to police. What do you think about what he's saying? Is this believable?
Actually, and the first thing that we do, obviously, is we put the police and the detectives on notice and say, you are not able to speak to my client because they never help themselves. And this is a classic case. I think the evidence is, and again, I haven't seen anything. I'm just reviewing what's out there in the press, but it's overwhelming in the sense that the wife is dead with some significant trauma to her body, and he has bloodied and swollen knuckles. He has what we look as defensive marks in the sense of she obviously it looks like she was scratching and trying to defend herself against him. And then you have a young infant child that's dead and there's no external injuries, which will obviously the autopsy is going to be significant, and I would expect that there's either suffocation or there's some significant blows to the head internally. So all of that is going to be devastating to the defendant. But again, I haven't seen anything, but him opening his mouth never helps.
No, not at all, not at all. Be quiet. Call Michael J. Brown. That's what you do. So this guy, apparently, he said his relationship with his wife was great. He told police that, said they had been a bit, sad, and the baby was more fussy than usual, and they had been depressed since a personal loss in 2021, according to the Denver Post reporting this. And we learned that loss was another infant child, only 9 days old. So the couple's first child dies in 2021 after suffering skull fractures. No charges were filed in that case. Right now, the autopsy is being done on the couple's second child and on the suspect's wife. Should police go back and re-examine the first child's death? Michael, what do you think about this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, I don't want to jump the gun, and I want to afford everybody the presumption of innocence, but you have a prior infant that was also died. I would love for them to look into, and I'm sure they will, look into the CPS records, any of the autopsy results, because if a young child died, I'm sure they did an autopsy. And even if they have to, unfortunately, exhume that body, to go back and look at the skull, because it seems, and I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it seems as though there's a pattern here. And I think that could be very helpful from an evidentiary standpoint in the prosecution of this case.
Great points, Michael. I think we could probably assume he's going to have a mental health evaluation as he's hit the jail. Michael, you know how that's standard. Dr. Janie, curious what you'd be most interested to know from that evaluation. Essentially, what questions might you have for this professor?
Well, we definitely would want to do a battery of tests looking at his personality disorder, because that would be a key, especially if there's a certain level of detachment to persons of family of origin. We'd want to look at his history and his abuse history, his previous relationships dynamics, and then his just what we would call his attachment to primary figures in his life. And because the most important person who could probably offer some insight in his intimate relationship is no longer here, especially because he can create this narrative and tell us that he had a great marriage and these types of things. So the people that will be closest to him and how he exaggerates his relationships with them and previous relationships will matter too. So this is somebody who would definitely need a battery of tests, but his tester or evaluator or psychologist, there would have to be some level of building of trust with him as we would evaluate him.
Definitely. Thank you for that. Dr. Janie Lacy, it's been wonderful having your insight this morning. I know we've got to let you go. Thank you for everything. We'll see you soon. Michael's going to stick around with us and want you to do the same, please. Still ahead, 2 bail bond companies are going to have to answer some questions in court after a suspect bonded out without a tracking device. Now he's accused of killing his ex-girlfriend. And what can tip the scales for Christine Ricci? We're getting ready for the closing arguments in the wife stabs husband murder trial, but case evidence isn't all in yet. There's a chance she could take the stand. We'll talk about it later in the show.